I never imagined a single handshake would cost me 4 billion, her courage took my breath away. I will never forget that moment. My heart raced, pounding against my chest like a drum. I stood there, hand outstretched, disbelief swirling in my mind. It felt like a scene from a movie, surreal yet terrifyingly real. Everything shattered that day. The people around looked like shadows, their faces masked with confusion, fear etched deeply into every wrinkle. I could taste the panic on my tongue, the metallic tang of anxiety mixed with the faint scent of cologne wafting through the air. Who could have known that such a simple act could unleash chaos? She was there, my partner in all this madness. Eyes wide, face pale, hands trembling. Sarah was my everything. We had built our dreams together, brick by brick, and now it felt like those walls were crumbling under the weight of decisions we never made. Her courage had always inspired me, but now, watching her falter broke my heart. That we had worked for years, weaving ourselves into this tapestry of ambition and hope. My father's voice echoed in my mind. Take the handshake, son. It's your chance to shine. I couldn't just walk away, no matter how the gravity weighed down on me. I locked eyes with Sarah. I could tell she was scared, and so was I. What if we failed? What if this was the moment that unraveled everything? The crowd held their breath. The silence was deafening. My palms were slick with sweat. Did they sense the electricity in the air? The tension crackled, thick as fog. Secret deals, hidden alliances, they bordered on insanity. Then came the unexpected twist. An executive I barely knew stepped forward, eyes dark with intention. His grip tightened around my hand, and a chill ran down my spine. It was as if he could read my soul, know my fears. I swallowed hard. What unfolded in that instant became a whirlwind, a swirling storm of emotions and consequences I couldn't predict. Would I regret accepting that handshake? The stakes felt impossibly high. The murmurs swelled around us, whispers threatening to consume us whole. I could almost see the dollars floating in the air, being snatched away with every tick of the clock. That I thought of the life Sarah and I dreamed of, a future we could reach hand in hand, but now doubt was creeping in like a thief in the night. Was our destiny shifting right before my eyes? I felt lost, caught between hope and dread. As our hands locked, something primal shifted. The ground felt unsteady underneath me. Did I just make a deal with fate? The crowd erupted into gasps, shock lines drawn tightly across their faces. What had I done? I whipped my head back to Sarah. Her eyes glimmered with tears, heartbroken yet defiant. Would this be the moment we would look back on? The defining moment we would never come back from? My breath caught in my throat as I realized one thing: everything could change in the blink of an eye. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air felt thick, suffocating, as I stood frozen in place, the cheers of the crowd fading into a dull roar, overtaken by the pounding of my own heartbeat. Each thud echoed the gravity of my decision, the handshake, a bridge to an uncharted territory fraught with peril. I glanced at Sarah, a single tear cascading down her cheek, a silent testament to the chaos swirling around us. Why did you do it? Her voice trembled, caught between accusation and disbelief. I flinched at her words, the sharp edge of reality slicing deeper than the confusion around us. Did I dare explain the weight of my aspirations, the pressure to perform? Or would it deepen the chasm of fear that was now a barrier between us? I thought it was our chance, Sarah. A single moment that could define everything we've worked for, I stammered, searching her eyes for a flicker of understanding amidst the storm. Instead, I saw shadows of doubt creeping in, and it twisted in my gut like a coiled snake. As the crowd buzzed with frenetic energy, I felt the presence of the executive still lingering between us, his smug satisfaction palpable. He had taken what was naively intended as an opportunity and morphed it into a gamble that felt more like a sentence. But who was the real enemy here? The man who had shaken my hand or the insecurities whispering insidiously in my ear? I wrapped my arm around Sarah, pulling her close, hoping to shield her from the fallout. Well, figure this out. We always do. But as the words left my lips, I questioned their truth. Could we really navigate through this turmoil together? Or had I steered us into a tempest with no exit? We stepped aside, searching for solace in a corner of the vast space filled with thrumming bodies. The noise faded slightly, but the stillness amplified our emotions, raw and exposed. Sarah turned away, her back to me, and I felt the rift deepening. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just business, it was everything we had built. In that moment, an unfamiliar face approached a young intern with wide, hopeful eyes. Had been watching us from a distance, hesitating as he worked up the courage to step forward. "Excuse me," he said softly, almost timidly. "I'm new here, but I overheard what just happened. I just wanted to say it takes a lot of guts to make such a bold move. Not everyone has the bravery to take a chance." His words hung in the air like a fragile thread of hope. I turned to him, brow furrowed in disbelief. Should I have really accepted his affirmation? I glanced back at Sarah, who was still distant, tracing a finger over her wet cheek, feeling the weight of his words barely ripple through the fog of despair enveloping us. Before I could respond, the intern continued, "I believe in you both. You have the chance to create something incredible. Just remember, it's okay to be scared. You're not alone." His sincerity broke through like a beam of sunlight fighting against the oppressive clouds. For a moment, I felt the tidal wave of anxiety recede, replaced with the flicker of a flaming ember of determination igniting in my chest. But Sarah remained steadfast, unwilling or unable to meet my gaze. I wanted to reach out, to assure her it would be okay, to convince her this could have a bright side, but doubt anchored her feet. Suddenly, the sharp ring of a phone cut through the moment. I glanced down, recognizing the caller. It was my father. My blood ran cold at the thought of him hearing any details about this handshake, the monumental choice I had made apparent in the very high-stakes world we navigated. With a quick glance at Sarah, I pressed, "Accept, hello?" The sternness of his voice seeped through the phone, the weight of expectations palpable. "You better explain yourself." My heart sank. It felt like I was standing on the precipice, the ground crumbling away beneath my feet. I felt Sarah's presence shift beside me, her body language tense. It was as if she were sensing the storm brewing on the other end of the call. As I opened my mouth to respond, my mind raced. Did I dare reveal the true depths of our dilemma? Would conveying our fears bring a sense of clarity, or would it only plunge us deeper into despair? The words formed on the tip of my tongue, ready to spill forth, but just as I began to speak, a commotion erupted nearby, a surge of voices rising in panic. I turned instinctively, my heart thundering against my chest again, fear suffocating as my breath hitched. An announcement blared over the speakers, disjointed and chaotic, setting the crowd dancing energetically into turmoil. The room felt as though it had been struck by lightning, cascading shockwaves that rattled the very core of my being. And then it hid a revelation that froze time in its tracks. I looked back at Sarah, and for the first time, instead of seeing confusion and doubt, I saw pure determination reflected in her eyes. Before I could process her expression, something in the atmosphere shifted, an undercurrent of urgency and disarray. "Something's happening," she whispered with a sudden crack in her voice, pulling me closer as I felt her vibrations resonate through me. As we braced ourselves for the unknown, I realized that our lives, our dreams, and perhaps our relationship teetered on the edge of an unforeseen precipice. The stakes were higher than ever, and the chaos may have only just begun. Where would this unexpected turn lead us? I had no answers as we stood, interlocked in a world becoming increasingly unrecognizable, fear echoing powerfully in our hearts. What had I unleashed with that fateful handshake, and would it tear us apart or bring us closer together? The thrumming chaos enveloped us, a dark tide crashing against the shores of our fragile resolve. My heart raced, thrumming with an anxious rhythm as the crowd buzzed around us. I could feel Sarah's hand gripping mine tighter, our fingers laced in a shared uncertainty that felt electric. Every instinct told me to shield her from whatever was unfolding, but the reality was stark. I was powerless against the tide. As the frenzied voices escalated, a cloud of uncertainty loomed over the space. Whispers of concern slithered through the people surrounding us, and I caught fragments of conversation. Someone had seen a commotion near the executive suite, another claimed it might involve a security breach. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice barely breaking through the cacophony. I turned back to the intern, hoping he might shed light on the turbulence. But his eyes were wide, panic mingling with admiration, stifling any coherent responses he might have had. The pulsating lights overhead flickered ominously, casting erratic shadows across Sarah's face. Her expression, instead of mirroring my fear, became fierce, igniting something deep inside me that I hadn't realized was still alive amidst the tumultuous waves of my decisions. "Let's go see," she urged, her voice steady, infused with a spark of determination. A small part of me wanted to pull her away, to shield her from whatever chaos was about to unfold, but the intensity of her gaze was magnetic, pulling me down the hallway as we joined the thickening crowd. With each step, the noise crescendoed, voices rising and falling in a cacophony of confusion and urgency. We squeezed through the throngs, Sarah's determination propelling us forward like a compass pointing to true north. In this moment, I felt the threads of our connection tighten, their warmth reminding me of the roots that had anchored us through storms before. We emerged near the back of the stage, where a cluster of concerned executives huddled, their faces drawn tightly, urgency etched into their features. I caught snatches of conversation, a breach, a potential financial fallout, an irate investor. My stomach twisted in knots. Was this somehow linked to my reckless gamble, the handshake that had spiraled into this whirlwind? I caught sight of the executive, still smug despite the chaos around him, and the anger burned hot in my chest. Had I inadvertently strung us all into this web of madness? I stole a glance back at Sarah. She was focused, her expression a mix of resolve and fear, and it struck me anew how easily I had underestimated her strength. Suddenly, the crowd parted like the seas before Moses, revealing the calm figure of our CEO, her presence magnetic. She stepped forward, raising her hand for silence, and a stillness descended, one built on anticipation more than tranquility. "Listen up," she called, her voice steady but refined with the undercurrents of urgency we all felt. "We have a breach in our system, and I need everyone in this room to remain calm. Security is on it. We need to work as a team and gather information, so I expect all hands on deck. If you have any updates, speak up now." Unease rippled through me. Did this risk tarnish the image I'd been desperately trying to build? My mind raced, not only with worry for my career but also for the fragile connection with Sarah I could still feel trembling like a taut string straining against its fate. Her voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "How can I help?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with an unpredicted fire. I admired her, the girl who stood strong in the face of this consuming rampage, defying the chaos while I felt like I was unraveling. The CEO glanced around, assessing everyone in the crowd with an almost nostalgic intensity. "I need someone to check the server logs. If there's an insider involved, we'll need quick action." Without waiting for anyone else, Sarah stepped forward, eyes locked on the CEO. "I can do that. I have some experience with data analysis, and I can run diagnostics to see if anything is out of place." Pride surged, blocking out the fear that loomed. I couldn't let myself be consumed by my own shortcomings when she was stepping into the fray, that glimmer of hope rekindling my spirit even as it sent chills racing down my spine. "Sarah, wait!" I called out, taking a step forward to grasp her arm. But she turned with a fire in her eyes, a beacon amidst the gathering storm. "I need to do this," she insisted, a fierce determination lining her voice. Before I could counter her resolve, she was off, storming through the crowd with the confidence of someone who had found her purpose in the storm. I stood paralyzed, rooted by a mix of admiration and fear that I was wrestling internally, the vibration of my phone breaking through my thoughts. Another call. My father again? No. I had no room for his judgments or expectations. I turned away, letting it ring through. Sarah was out there, possibly uncovering vital information, while I felt like I was drowning in uncertainty once more. How could this be happening? But the tumult around me felt insistent, an urgency bubbled, pushing me forward. I had to leverage this moment, even in my fear. I stepped closer to the throng of executives, ready to lend support, to combat my own demons while Sarah battled something far more pressing. And yet, as the minutes dragged on, anticipation coiled painfully in my gut. Would Sarah return with solutions or revelations that would knock the ground beneath us once again? Would this turmoil bind us together, or unravel the threads that were just beginning to mend? All I could do was brace myself, knowing that the chaos was far from over. The room hummed with tension, a finely tuned instrument of anxiety as the minutes ticked by. I stood on the edge of the gathering, a spectator, my heart echoing Sarah's absence. An ache penetrated my chest. How had it come to this? Just weeks ago, we were two passionate souls chasing dreams, and now a single decision had woven us into a tapestry of crisis that I could see. The executives huddled together, their murmurs growing frantic as they shared glimpses of their phones. The look on their faces mirrored something I knew all too well: fear. Fear of losing everything they had painstakingly built, a fear I was officially part of. My stomach churned bitterly at that thought. "Hey," a voice pulled me from my swirling thoughts. It was James, the head of marketing, visibly shaken but trying to maintain composure. "You all right? I know this is a lot to take in." "Not really," I admitted, my voice a whisper. "I'm just waiting for Sarah to come back," James nodded, the understanding in his eyes a small balm against the chaos. "She's brave to step up. I wouldn't have the guts to do what she's doing." His words hung in the air between us, heavy with admiration tinged by dread. I couldn't help but curl my fingers into fists, my nails digging into my palms as concern flooded my mind. What if she found a deeper problem? What if it implicated me? I felt as if I were standing at the precipice of a dark chasm, waiting to be pushed. Suddenly, the CEO's urgent voice broke through the noise. "We need to act swiftly. Whoever did this is still out there." Her gaze pierced through the crowd, locking onto mine unexpectedly. "And we need to keep our emotions in check. Panic doesn't help solve problems." That was true, but nothing about this felt like a textbook crisis. Panic was the undercurrent, flowing through everyone's veins, rendering logical thought obsolete. And without Sarah here, I was adrift in an ocean of uncertainty. A moment later, my phone buzzed again, this time a text. It was from Sarah. "Run the backlogs and notify IT if anything looks fishy. I'm about to pull up the logs now. Don't worry. It'll be okay." My heart swelled with pride. There it was again, the flicker of hope igniting my spirit. Even in the depths of this predicament, she was showing the strength and determination I had always admired. I typed back a quick response: "You've got this. I believe in you." Not long after, I felt cold dread wash over me as a frantic voice cut through the crowd once more. "We've got a serious problem. The financials have been altered. Someone is trying to sabotage us." The atmosphere instantly shifted as tension became palpable. Eyes darted frantically among the executives. Confusion transformed into something sinister, a dread that settled heavily over us like smoke. My initial sense of helplessness morphed into stabbing anxiety. If the numbers were indeed tampered with, how would we prove our innocence? How would I prove mine? I tried to maintain an air of calm, but sweat broke out along my brow as doubts flooded my mind. What would happen if they traced it back to the handshake? The risk ID taken, the secrets ID buried, were they about to surface, threatening to consume everything I cared about? "Stay focused, everyone." The CEO's voice cut through the chaos once more. "We need to isolate the problem. Remember, if we work together, we can pull through this. But that assurance felt like a lifeline that could snap at any moment. The seconds ticked by agonizingly slow. I watched faces around me twist with worry. It wasn't just me who would be affected, it would be everyone, and that weight threatened to bring me to my knees. Then, a sudden hush fell over the crowd, heads turning toward the entrance as Sarah emerged, flushed with determination. The crowd parted for her like the sea, and I could see the glimmer of ambition igniting her features. A spark of hope flared within me. What did you find? I asked, even as the crowd closed in around her, hungry for answers. Her eyes shone with the intensity of unshed emotions. There are discrepancies. Bigger than we thought. Someone has been targeting us for weeks, and it's not just about the breach. It goes deeper. She hesitated, taking a breath. They're planning something catastrophic. We need to act now. The world around me spun, her words slicing through my already frayed nerves. I felt as if the ground beneath my feet had shifted, destabilized by a truth that threatened to unravel us further. What do you mean catastrophic? I pressed, but before she could respond, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, a name flashing across the screen that made my heart drop into my stomach. Dad, I muttered. The man invoking so much dread held all my past choices on a tight rein, waiting for a moment like this. The timing was too uncanny, too predatory. My hands trembled. I had to make a choice whether to answer and dive back into his world of judgment, or to lean on the one person who had just confirmed my worst fears were real. The room was on the brink of unraveling, with Sarah's unexpected wisdom counterpointing the tightening noose of fate threatening to draw me in. And so, I braced myself, knowing full well that the tide of uncertainty was rising again, and I was not sure how much longer I could stave off the waves of despair crashing against our frail little sanctuary. The tension in the room grew deeper as I stood frozen, the phone still buzzing in my hand, each vibration reverberating through the pit in my stomach. Would I answer the call, or would I risk the consequences of confronting the truth that had shadowed me for too long? Everyone's eyes were glued to Sarah, the air charged with anticipation. It felt like the world had narrowed down to that pivotal choice, the looming specter of my father on the other end of the line, and the unwavering resolve on Sarah's face. In that moment, my heart screamed for clarity, for a pathway forward, but instead, I found myself drowning in indecision. Do you need to take that? Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern, though her eyes remained fixed on the gathered crowd. They were looking to her for reassurance, anchoring themselves to her strength as if it were the only lifeline left. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to meet her gaze. No. My voice was firmer than I felt, but the urge to protect her, to show her I could be steadfast too, overpowered the impulse to unravel. Not now, she nodded, her expression shifting to something more raw, almost vulnerable. Well, get through this together, she said, a determination echoing in those words that flickered hope where fear had threatened to engulf me. But before I could respond, a wave of murmurs surged through the room, bringing with it a host of conflicting emotions. Wait, do you hear that? Someone called out, and my heart sank as I recognized the noisy, a faint siren wailing, growing louder by the moment. Panic began trickling through the crowd like a contagious rash. The CEO's face paled as she shot a sharp look toward the door. We need to stay calm. Everyone, we should move to the conference room where we can strategize, but the anxious glances and knowing looks shared among employees spoke volumes. They sensed what I did. This wasn't just an ordinary breach anymore, it felt like we were being cornered. Sarah, listen to me, I said, urgency spilling from my voice. If someone's targeting us, they might be on our heels already. What if they've managed to orchestrate something even worse? What if they're close? Her wide eyes locked onto mine, reflecting a sudden swell of fear mingled with courage. Then we have to act, Adam. Now. We can't let fear paralyze us. The sirens drew nearer, an unwelcome reminder of impending consequences, and I couldn't shake the sense that time was slipping through our fingers like sand. I had to put my trust in her, in the surprising power of her resolve, even as I grappled with my own internal chaos. As we made our way towards the conference room, my thoughts intertwining with dread and hope, I stole a glance at Sarah. Every step she took radiated intent. I realized in that moment how much I had been holding back, not just from her, but from myself. It scared me to imagine what might come if I surrendered to the embrace of vulnerability. Do you think anyone else knows? I asked, falling into step beside her. About the larger implications, she hesitated, her brow furrowing. I doubt it. They're still trying to piece it together. We need to be the first to figure out what's really happening, or this could all come crashing down. Her candor sent a shiver through me, awakening my instincts. I recognized the vital task ahead. We had become each other's safeguard, two beacons in a storm fraught with duplicity. The question was, how far would I go to protect her and the truth? As we entered the conference room, the cacophony of voices faded, replaced by an eerie silence punctuated only by the sound of our footsteps. We gathered around the long mahogany table, a collection of worried faces turned our way. I caught sight of James, anxiety etched across his features, leaning in closer as if to catch every word Sarah might say. We need all hands on deck, she declared, her voice steady, commanding attention. The discrepancies in the financials are evidence of a larger deception at play. A slow realization washed over my skin. I felt the collective weight of uncertainty settle around us, even as her strength began to shift the tide. For every heart that quaked with fear, there was a flicker of determination kindled anew. Just then, my phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail notification. The name that flashed Dad pricked at my senses, eliciting a visceral wave of unease. A maelstrom of thoughts spiraled within. I could only imagine the words collected in that message, potentially wielding the power to expose my past sins like raw wounds. Come on, Adam, James urged me, a frown etched across his brow. What do we do next? I looked around the room, the faces of so many who depended on Sarah and me now filled with a sense of collective dread. Completing that moment, I reached for my phone. Time was bleeding away, and the truth refused to wait. I paused, feeling Sarah's eyes on me, steady and true, and I found the courage to continue. I can't let this moment slip. We need to find a way to prove that we have been compromised, but we also need to be ready to protect ourselves. With a deep breath, I turned my phone screen back toward me, thumbing desperately through to the voicemail before Sarah could see. But just before I could hit play, the lights in the room flickered and went out, plunging us into an unnatural darkness that sent a shudder racing through the gathering. Then, a light illuminating the faceless expanse of shadows appeared on my phone's screen. As I pressed play, the faint sound of my father's voice emanated from the device, and I felt the world shift beneath me. The unmistakable chill of dread settled in the very walls of our precarious sanctuary, closing in around us, the robust intensity of everything at risk colliding with my deepest fears. I hope you're ready for what's coming, son. Because once the pieces fall, you won't be able to put them back together. In that moment, I knew the precariousness of our situation had escalated from troubling to catastrophic, and we were no longer just fighting to save a company, we're battling against a shadowy hand that wanted to reclaim the very lives we were struggling to maintain. And as I steadied my breathing, absorbing the reality of the revelation, every heartbeat echoed a final warning: the fight was only just beginning. The tension cascaded like an avalanche, raw fear colliding with the flickering light of my phone. The walls around us felt as if they were slowly inching closer, inciting the chaos brewing under the surface. In that weighty stillness, my father's haunting words echoed in my mind like a hammer striking metal, a blade of foreboding cutting through the taut silence. Adam, what did he say? Sarah's voice pierced through the encroaching darkness, heavy with concern and urgency. Her breath was quickened, eyes wide, reflecting back the flickering light in a way that painted her vulnerability with fierce defiance. I hesitated, aware of the burden those words would carry. If I opened this floodgate, the aftermath could drown us all. But as I caught the worried gazes around the table, each gaze steeped in a palpable amalgam of fear and resolve, the decision crystallized. I needed to share the storm that had brewed inside me, the undeniable strength Sarah had ignited within my spirit. He said that everything is about to fall apart. That we won't be able to put the pieces back together, I managed to say, my voice shaky. And it's connected to something much larger, a conspiracy I couldn't even fathom. Whispers erupted around the table, a symphony of worry and disbelief. I could see James' lips twitching, forming unspoken questions that sliced through the air. Are we talking about embezzlement? Corporate espionage? He probed, urgency driving the words out. I don't know, I replied, lowering my voice as if speaking louder might summon whatever dark force hovered just beyond our reach. But if he's right, then we need to mobilize. We can't let fear dictate our next steps. Sarah stepped closer, her presence emanating strength as she instinctively positioned herself as my shield against the encroaching chaos. Let's focus on gathering evidence, anything that proves we've been compromised. We can't confront this darkness alone, she stated firmly, igniting the room with her unwavering trust. A chorus of agreement rang out, renewing the flickering light of hope. Each one of us found purpose, a shared commitment to restore the light in our darkest hour. Sensing we had become a unit fighting for survival, I understood the role we each had to play. But as we delved deeper into strategy, a loud bang suddenly thudded against the conference room door. My heart stuttered, and I sensed the air shift, a darkness clawing at the edges of our sanctuary. We exchanged glances, and I could feel the temperature drop, foreboding shaping our expressions. Time had seemed to stretch into eternity, and now it yielded the most unexpected outcome, an unscheduled intrusion. The door burst open, revealing a woman I had never expected to see. Olivia, the head of security, stood breathless and imploring, her eyes darting around the room. You need to evacuate. Now. I can't explain here, it's not safe, she urged, her voice taut with tension. The shockwaves reverberating throughout the room offset our fragile composure. Evacuate? What are you talking about? I demanded, the need for clarity surging within me. It's compromised. They're coming for the files, she warned. I've received word that the breach is far more extensive than we thought. They already have a plan to obliterate evidence of everything. I was supposed to look deeper, but they intercepted me. We need to move. As she spoke, uncertainty rippled through my mind. Where could we go? How could we escape? The vulnerability of our situation felt magnified, and my instinct screamed to protect Sarah at all costs. Where's the safest exit? She could sense my growing trepidation, the mental chess match between our course and the imminent peril. There's a side entrance through the parking garage. It's shielded from view, but we'll need to hurry, Olivia responded, urgency threading through her words. Another thud at the door sent adrenaline spiking through me. The noise reverberated ominously, making my instincts scream to take action. This was a turning point, and we couldn't afford to lose this moment. That I turned to Sarah. We can't leave anyone behind, but we need to act fast, I said, desperation clawing at my throat. Before she could respond, the lights flickered again, a turbulent sway of shadow and light revealing the mounting tension in her gaze. You're right, she concurred, holding my hand tightly as if we were tethered by an unseen anchor. We have no choice. As we raced toward the exit, the narrow corridor twisted with shadows, urging us to leaven the weight that clung like a second skin. My heart thundered against my ribs, anticipation and fear colliding with each thunderous beat. Once outside the door, we hurried down the staircase, Olivia leading the way, urgently whispering directions. The air outside was charged, but relief washed over me as we gathered in the dank garage. Steeling myself, I pushed forward, ready to act on the thread of hope left dangling before us, but just as we reached the cars in the dim light, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from behind us, deliberate and closing in. I turned back, my heart sinking as dread settled a second time. The intruders were already inside. In a flash, Olivia's expression changed from urgency to terror. Go. I'll hold them off. Just run, no. I shouted, desperation flooding out as I moved toward her, but she stepped between me and the dark surge approaching. You have to believe me. This is how we turn the tide. Now go. And just like that, she thrust us toward the parking lot exit, a woman determined to become a shield. I felt every part of me lurch, torn between loyalty to a friend and lingering worry about the danger looming just steps away. Adam, we need to move. Sarah yanked me back toward the exit, and the last sight of Olivia, fierce warrior in a tempest of chaos, faded behind the shadows, but the image burned bright in my mind. There was no time to shed tears or ponder the odds. I turned to Sarah, her eyes wide with fear and determination, and before I could hesitate, we bolted out into the night, the air thick with humid potential. The stakes had now risen immeasurably, and as I glanced back at the building receding into darkness, I knew this was no longer just about unraveling a mystery. It had become a race against time, against an unseen enemy. "Whatever comes next, I won't abandon you," I whispered between us, the promise forged in the face of the gathering storm. Sarah squeezed my hand, a lifeline that tethered me to hope even as bells of uncertainty rang louder than ever. "I won't abandon you either," but as we approached the exit, a distant explosion shattered the night, a jagged symphony of chaos and a blaring warning that our fight was far from over. The ground shook beneath our feet, reality shifting abruptly, leaving us breathless at the precipice of the unknown, and from beyond the echoes, a single thought took hold of my mind, a truth as undeniable as the fiery revelation that had just ignited the dark. If the world we knew was about to burn down, rising from the ashes was no longer just a hope, it was the only way forward. The adrenaline surged like a tidal wave, propelling Sarah and me through the parking lot, panic fueling our every stride. Yet, in the chaos, a growing sense of disbelief washed over me. What had begun as a desperate escape was morphing into a surreal nightmare. The clamor from the explosion reverberated in my chest, a grim reminder that this was not merely a sudden turn of events, it was the emergence of something darker. As we reached the edge of the parking lot, I cast a glance over my shoulder. The building hadn't just succumbed to chaos, it was alight, flames licking the dark sky, swallowing everything in their path. My stomach twisted at the vision of what we'd left behind, Olivia standing resolute, a beacon against the darkness. Only now, her figure was a mere silhouette against the raging inferno. The longing to go back screamed in my bones, juxtaposed against a primal instinct to survive. "Adam." Sarah's voice broke the spell of my reverie, urgent with panic. "Keep moving." I focused on the here and now, the feeling of her hand clasped tightly in mine anchoring me amidst the turmoil. We pushed forward toward the closest street, the night air thick with smoke and fear. A car blared its horn in the distance, the city waking to the impending disaster. When we made it onto the main road, the torrent of emotions surged into a tangible wave of urgency. Where could we go? What was waiting for us in this impossible reality we were now trapped within? A million questions ricocheted in my mind, battling my rational instincts. That he said the files were compromised, I remembered, the gravity sending chills down my spine. If they're willing to burn the place down, they must be desperate. Then we need to get evidence, proof that we can use against them, Sarah replied, her resolve igniting the flickering flame of hope in my chest. If we can find a computer or back up anything. Each word she spoke held weight and promise, a lifeline I never knew I needed. It echoed the truth that I'd been trying to push down. This was about more than just survival now, it was about rising from the ashes of our shattered world. "We're going to need help, though," I said, catching the urgency in her gaze. "I don't know if we can do this alone, that's why we need to find the others," she replied, determination coursing through her voice. As she spoke, the ring of my phone pierced through the chaos, a familiar tone making me flinch. I fumbled to answer, heart racing. "Adam." James' voice crackled through the line, panic thickening the air between us. "We're not safe, they're everywhere. We need you, James, where are you?" I pressed, focusing on the faint whisper of his location, which flickered like a distant star amid the darkening skies. I am at the line went dead, static filling the air, and my stomach plummeted. I scanned our surroundings, terror creeping into my bones. No, come on, Adam, look!" Sarah shouted, pointing down the street. A faint glow illuminated an alley, one that felt too close to the danger we had just escaped. "We have to go there, please." The desperation in her voice left no room for hesitation. We dashed towards the alley, the cool darkness enveloping us like an embrace, and yet, the warmth of earlier courage now felt distant, a mere memory. As we settled into the shadows, I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the quivering within. We need to find a safe place to collect our thoughts. If we just had a few hours, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew time was a luxury we didn't have. I just hope James is okay, Sarah whispered, her eyes mirrors of fear and resolve. He will be, I reassured her, even as self-doubt clawed at my insides. He's resourceful. Yet, the question remained, what would it take for us to find safety? What obstacles loomed in wait, just beyond the flickering edges of our hope? Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a soft murmur reverberating against the walls around us. I leaned closer to Sarah, heart thumping. Did you hear that? The murmur grew clearer, transforming into whispers, frantic, low, yet unmistakably familiar. Adam? Sarah? It was James, stumbling into view, breathless and wild-eyed but alive. James! I exclaimed, relief flooding through me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the growing urgency in his expression. Listen, we don't have much time, he warned, glancing behind him. The perimeter is crawling with them. They're looking for anyone who made it out. What about the files? I asked, the reality of our shared mission fueling my determination. Do you have a plan? He nodded, glancing back toward the street with an intensity that ratcheted my fear. We need leverage. There's a server downtown that holds everything. If we can get inside and download what we need, we might have a chance. I exchanged a look with Sarah. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but the flicker of hope growing within made me believe we could fight back if we could just execute our plan. Let's go then, I said, determination steeping into every word. Together, but before we could make our way out from the alley, a piercing scream echoed through the air, chilling me to the bone, followed by the sound of footsteps pounding closer. Time slipped through my fingers, and as we strained to listen, another realization struck me like lightning. A unique voice amidst the chaos. It was Olivia. Get down! I yelled, pulling Sarah and James into the shadows just in time as a group of dark figures surged past, their faces obscured but their intent clear. They were hunting not just for witnesses, but for some face they couldn't afford to lose. Our latest connection to something larger than we had ever imagined, with the promise of danger lurking just beyond the thin barrier of our hiding place and the specter of Olivia's cry still ringing in my ears. I understood one immutable truth: the nights ahead would not simply test our resolve. They would shatter any remnants of normalcy we once had. Would her silence spell our doom, or could it become our beacon through this dark storm? The air thickened with unanswered questions, and as I held Sarah's hand, the weight of what we faced descended like an inescapable burden. We had no way of knowing how deep the conspiracy ran or what sacrifices lay ahead as uncertainty loomed. I couldn't shake the feeling that the coming storm was just the beginning. The adrenaline still coursed through my veins, but it was laced with a different tension now, one marked by fear and uncertainty. In the dim light of the alley, I could see it in Sarah's eyes, the same flickering hope that grappled with the encroaching shadows of despair. We can't just stay here, James urged, his voice barely above a whisper, full of urgency but tinged by fear. If they find us, we won't just disappear. They'll erase every trace of who we are. I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in like lead. We had already lost so much. Losing any chance to fight back felt like a betrayal of everything Olivia had stood for. Let's move, I murmured, pushing myself to the forefront. As soon as I turned the corner, breath caught in my throat. The street stretched out before us, seemingly devoid of life, yet the hum of tension vibrated in the air. Filament bulbs flickered overhanging us, casting uneven shadows that danced eerily upon the walls. Over here, Sarah hissed, pointing towards a narrow passageway leading into a seemingly abandoned building. I felt a sense of urgency pull us, the instinct to seek refuge mingling with the pressing threats that loomed. When we slipped inside, the door creaked ominously, sending echoes throughout the space. Dust motes floated in beams of moonlight slicing through the broken windows, lending an almost ethereal quality to our surroundings. The musty smell of neglect filled my lungs. We were intruders in a place that had once thrived, now succumbed to the decay of time. Do you think anyone's here? Sarah whispered, her voice barely a whisper as tremors of unease punctuated her words. No, I started, but then I heard its soft footsteps, a shuffle in the shadows. My heart raced, and I motioned for silence, straining to listen. "Stay back," I gestured, stepping forward hesitantly as the figure in the gloom came into view. An elderly man, his face etched with lines of age and worry, trembled as he raised his hands. "Please, don't hurt me," he pleaded, eyes wide with panic. That I kept my distance, raising my palm in a gesture of peace. "We're not going to hurt you. We just need a place to hide for a moment. They're after us, and they will come," he warned, glancing nervously at the narrow opening we had entered. "This place may not be safe for long. They ruined everything," he added bitterly, his voice shaking. "Have you seen anyone else?" James asked, desperately searching the man's gaze for any sign of hope. "Not for days," he replied. "When it started, they took my neighbors, dragged them away in the night." His voice cracked. I heard them scream. With every word he uttered, my heart sank deeper. This wasn't just about us anymore, this was about a community fractured by fear and tyranny. I felt a rush of guilt. Were we just going to leave people like him behind to face this nightmare alone? But just as I was about to speak, a softer presence broke into this heaviness. The old man stepped aside and revealed a stretch of untouched space behind the debris, showcasing a narrow staircase leading down. "That I have a cellar," he offered, his voice catching as hope flickered like a candle fighting against the wind. "You can hide there, thank you," I replied, guilt sizzling beneath my skin as I led the way. We descended the stairs cautiously, James and Sarah flanking behind me, their whispers muted as the darkness enveloped us. The cellar was cramped, lined with shelves stuffed with forgotten relics of the past, but it offered shelter from the chaos above. I could feel the collective breath of the three of us exhale in unison, if only temporarily free from the threat lurking just beyond the door. As we settled into the silence, I looked around the dimly lit space, my mind racing. "What happens when they come here? We outsmart them," James replied, his voice steadying as he sat against the wall, looking at the old man. "You said they took your neighbors. Why? What are they looking for?" The man hesitated, an expression of something deeper racing across his worn features. "They're gathering people with connections, people like you. They're looking for information. You're your targets now." That a chilling awareness washed over me as I turned back to Sarah and James, their expressions mirroring the dread that churned in my stomach. "They might come looking for us," I whispered. "What if they've already found Olivia? What if she was taken?" Even in the shadows, the despair was palpable. "She could still be alive," Sarah offered, though her voice cracked under the weight of uncertainty. It was a fragile hope, but one that spun in our hearts like a moth dancing near flame. "A woman with courage like that," the old man murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. "You don't find those easily anymore." Suddenly, the air shifted, a vibration rippling through the walls that felt like an earthquake warning. I held my breath, ears peaked, before a deafening crash echoed from above, the footsteps growing louder. "Closer, they're here," I hissed, urgency spilling into my voice. Panic surged, and I pressed the wall, ready to face the storm brewing above. But as I glanced at the old man, his expression was resolute, eyes blazing with an unexpected fire. "They will try to break you," he warned, his voice reverberating like a chant. "The question is, will you let them?" The words dug deep into my chest, igniting something more powerful than fear, the determination to fight back for Olivia and everyone else caught in this insidious net. With no time left to question who might strike the first blow, I turned to Sarah and James, a silent agreement sealing our fates. As the door rattled in its frame, signaling our impending confrontation, one truth became crystal clear: we were in a fight not just for our lives but for the very essence of our future. And then, amidst the din, a shocking shout rang out, a voice that could change everything, ringing through the chaos and sending shockwaves of realization through my chest. "Adam! Sarah! It's me! I'm here!" My breath caught, hope intertwining agonizingly with dread. There was no mistaking that voice. It was Olivia. The sound of Olivia's voice sent a jolt through my body, a rush of conflicting emotions drowning out the panic that had consumed me just moments before. It felt surreal, almost like a phantom echo from a dream. "Olivia?" I shouted, the name bursting from my lips, desperation mingling with disbelief. The rattling door paused for a heartbeat, as if the world itself froze, awaiting a response that I am here. I got out, I found a safe space. She called again, her tone tinged with urgency and determination that clashed vividly with the vulnerability we all felt. Where? I urged, adrenaline coursing through my veins, just behind you. Where her voice faltered momentarily, swallowed by the chaos above, but I could hear the underlying strength, the undeniable will that had always drawn me to her. "I'm hiding with a group, we can get you out." James shot me a bewildered look, processing the unexpected flicker of hope radiating from Olivia's words like light in a darkened room. "How?" he whispered, almost subconsciously leaning towards the chaotic noise brewing above. "Through the back door of the building," she replied swiftly, but as she spoke, the rattle of the front door intensified, menacing and relentless. "Don't come this way," I barked, urgency coloring my voice as I exchanged frantic glances with Sarah and James. "They'll hear you if you stay near. What should we do?" Sarah asked, fear glimmering in her wide eyes, a reflection of the turmoil swirling around us. "Wait for my signal," I instructed. "If they breach this door, we need to scatter and find a way through the building. It's our only chance." That I and the dim light of the cellar, time seemed to stretch into an agonizing eternity. The old man, who had momentarily lit a spark of hope within the darkened reality of our predicament, squeezed my shoulder, imparting strength without reproach. "You have to be strong. Don't let anyone diminish your resolve." The door rattled again, this time with an audible crack, splintering my concentration. My heart raced. We were running out of time. "We need to go now," I urged, trying to illuminate the urgency of our situation. Just as I turned towards the cellar door, its hefty frame exploded inwardward, splintering like dry kindling, revealing figures cloaked in shadow, faces obscured. The air quaked with the weight of my dread, yet my voice roared above the chaos instinctively, barely masking a shiver of fear. "Get ready." The startled figures hesitated only for a heartbeat, but the unity we felt in that moment felt monumental. I glanced back at Sarah and James. We would face this together. It was too late to back down. "Run," I commanded, pushing the others forward as we stumbled out of our temporary haven and into the shattered remnants of the room above, exposed to the silhouettes lurking. I darted left, pulling James and Sarah with me as we fled deeper into the building. "Olivia!" I shouted again, my voice trailing through the muted chaos, desperately hoping to tether her to us. "Here. This way," she called, her figure emerging from the shadows, illuminated like an angel against the oppressive darkness. She sprinted toward us, her hair disheveled but her spirit unbroken. Relief crashed over me, a wave so powerful it threatened to sweep me under. But just as we began to converge, the figures lunged towards us, confrontation blossoming into chaos. "Go!" I yelled, feeling the weight of my promise to Olivia, if not losing her again. We turned as a cohesive unit, a rhythm pulsating between us, living and breathing the necessity of survival. Heart racing, I pushed through the back corridors, weaving through debris and dust, faith surging and propelling us forward. "Don't stop," James shouted, his breath ragged like ours as we pounded toward the faint outline of an exit flickering at the far end. Then, we smashed through a doorway into blinding light, stumbling onto a narrow street shrouded in the hush of evening. I barely registered our surroundings, focusing only on escaping the fingers reaching out from the shadows behind us, but relief morphed quickly into terror when I felt Olivia's hand slip from me, a sudden disconnect that set my heart racing. "Olivia!" I cried out as I turned back, but she had been yanked back into the throngs, a hand firmly clutching her shoulder. The world felt like it was spinning as I lunged forward, desperate to reclaim her. Hope was suddenly a fragile shard prone to shatter at any moment. In a fluid motion, I reached her just as the figure began to drag her back into the dark. "No!" I shouted, our hands gripping tightly in a desperate struggle, the grating sound of metal glinting in the dim light catching my eye as it reflected the looming threat around us. "Let her go!" James shouted, fury igniting within him, pushing forward into the fray. The clash of bodies and chaos erupted, a whirlwind of pain and adrenaline that blurred reality. But in that overwhelming chaos, a singular truth seized me: we had come this far together, there was no way I would let anyone strip that away, and just when I thought I could haul her back to safety, a second figure emerged, another dark silhouette cloaked in menacing intensity. As they swiped the air, and through the tumult, I heard the chilling whisper that shattered my heart. "It's not just about escaping, Adam. You will have to choose. Your choices have consequences." It was a voice I recognized too well, a voice that beckoned me to face the darkest corners of my reality, a chilling echo linking my past to this moment of desperation, caught between protecting Olivia and confronting the shadows of my own failures. I knew in that instant that our fight was far from over. And as the chaos raged on around me, that voice, the specter of Lo, urged me to make the hardest choice of my life. As the world blurred into a swinging tempest of arms and chaos, that voice resonated in my bones, sending shockwaves of panic coursing through me. Your choices have consequences. What had I done? The echoes of my past, woven with regret and ambition, seemed to blend into the present moment, intensifying the clash of emotions thrumming through my chest. I had pushed forward, had gambled not only my life but also the lives of those I cared about. Adam. James' voice cut through the haze as he struggled against the figure clutching Olivia. I lunged again, fueled by the desperation to protect not just Olivia, but everything we had fought for. In a blink, the crowd around us shifted, shadows merging into the fog of chaos while the specter of decision loomed ever larger in my heart. With renewed resolve, I reached toward Olivia, our hands a fragile lifeline in the turmoil, and for a moment, we locked eyes. They shimmered with a mixture of fear and an unmistakable fire, a plea woven into the desperation that bound us together. "Hold on," I choked out, drawing strength from the undeniable bond we had forged in the heat of this storm. As though summoned by my will, she returned my grip, and for the briefest of seconds, time suspended its maddening pace, anchoring fate to our mutual fight. But that glimmer of hope shattered as the figure tightened its grip, agile movements pulling Olivia just as a cold blade flickered menacingly in the half-light. "Let her go!" I roared, adrenaline surging through my veins as I swept forward, adrenaline amplifying my frame with an unexpected fierceness. I could taste fear in my mouth. It tasted bitter and metallic, yet resolute. The figure sneered, their features still concealed in the dark. But I could feel its weight of choice, the pull of consequence, and suddenly, clarity shattered through the chaos. "I know you." The words escaped me like an exorcism freeing a long-burdened spirit. "You're the one who hungers for control. Who profits from manipulation." The figure hesitated, lips curling in a low, mocking laugh. "What a clever boy you are now." But as their eyes shimmered, it felt as if a mask had slipped away, revealing a familiar desperation rooted in emptiness. In that fraction of a second, recognition collided with disbelief. It was an echo of betrayal from my past, a painful reminder of choices I had made, which now whipped around me like a storm. "Release her!" I shouted, every ounce of resolve pooling within my arms as I prepared for a confrontation that was not only for Olivia but for the years of confusion wrought by my own decisions. In that moment, my heart thundered, echoing the gravity of what lay before me, not just a battle for survival but one for redemption. And then, time shifted once more. As I moved forward, adrenaline ignited a reaction. In a straining instant, I swung my fist connecting with the shadowy figure, sending them staggering back, their grip on Olivia slackening. I pulled her to me, urgency fueling every second as her eyes went wide, disbelief sparking a kaleidoscope of emotions within my soul. "Are you all right?" I breathed, scanning her face, searching for signs of injury. But it was her strength that anchored me, her gaze piercing through the fog of despair. "We can't stop now. We have to keep moving." With renewed vigor, we fueled our escape, moving deeper into the labyrinth of darkness. We surged through corridors, the crumbling walls surrounding us protectively as we embraced the aftermath of our choices, turning through alleys of regret and resilience. Each footstep felt deliberate, reverberating with a relentless resolve that transcended the confines of fear. "That I can't believe you're alive," Olivia murmured, glancing back toward the chaos, her voice a fragile thread that bound us in the darkness. "I thought we lost you, Adam. I am here, and am not going anywhere," I replied, my voice a thread of assurance amidst the maelstrom. The realization struck me again: this wasn't just a commercial gamble, it was about the sacrifices we had inadvertently made along the way and the beautiful complexities of our entwined lives. In confronting our past, we forged new futures, one step at a time. Do you think we can really uncover the truth? James' raw honesty filled the shadows, his fear and hope a cocktail of vulnerability that intensified the air around us. "It feels like a war we can't win. There's always a chance if we believe," I replied, seizing that spark of defiance in my heart. "This has never been about just us, it's about everyone who suffers in silence, everyone who deserves a chance for justice." My voice rang, easing doubts, stitching together fragments of strength we had forged in that wave of uncertainty. Through the swirling chaos, I finally felt clarity crystallizing my path. Together, we reclaim our narrative. Together, we stop running. In that moment, as the fury raged just outside our fragile sanctuary, we stood as a united force, a testament to resilience shaped from honor. We were no longer just pawns in a dangerous game but warriors ready to fight back against the dark tide. A true reckoning birthed from shared choices, the consequences tethered by courage. With a shared breath, we sprinted toward liberation, weaving through the maze that promised shadows while seeking the light of truth. The sirens fading into a haunting echo underscored our journey, a reminder that sometimes the loudest battles rise above consequence, igniting a clandestine fire within. A fire we would nurture until the world around us burnt anew, and so we forged ahead, hearts flickering always toward hope, bound by a single truth: the shadows of the past may pursue with ruthless intensity, but not a soul can chain us forever. This was our moment, our story to reclaim, and no one could rewrite our fate. What will I choose, then? I would choose love over fear. I would choose truth over silence. I would choose to let the echoes of my choices become the wind beneath our wings as we soared into the unknown, together, ready to rise. Because if the night was long, the dawn would be brilliant in its promise, and we were ready to embrace whatever awaited us in the light.